The rain has returned, and this is just the beginning. We are tracking an atmospheric river that'll pour on the Bay Area this weekend, and another right on its heels.
It's not something like I can even comprehend right now.
Families mourn as new details emerge in the deadly Midair crash in D.C.
Our job is to just come out with the probable cause, but then more importantly, make recommendations so that this type of tragedy never occurs again.
We're asking an aviation expert why it can take so long to get answers.
If tariffs are implemented against Canada, we will respond.
New taxes on imports threaten to ignite a trade war. A Bay Area Republican leader joining us to weigh in on the latest moves from President Trump.
I think we're stronger now than we've been in many, many decades.
This is CBS News Bay Area with Elizabeth Cook.
I'm Ann Makovec, and it is a first alert weather day as the rain finally makes a comeback. And this is just a taste of what's to come. Let's take a live look outside. Might be raining now, but just wait until tomorrow. It could be dumping. That is the first of two peaks of this atmospheric river. Let's get right over to Chief Meteorologist Paul Hagan, who is timing all of this out for us, trying to figure out when we can walk our dogs.
Limited opportunities for that over the next several days. Take advantage. Whenever the rain kind of tapers off, get Sandy out the door for a quick little run. Same thing for my Leo. Let's take a look at the floor map here, and we're going to go back in time over the last 12 hours as the rain has been moving in over that time frame. Light to moderate showers at first in the North Bay, but spreading across the Bay Area in waves. Some pockets of heavier rain here and there, but no flooding issues to this point. The ground is dry, the vegetation is dry, so it's been able to absorb this first wave, this first peak, which isn't even peaking yet. That's going to happen later tonight. So we're going to take a look at that momentarily. Let's take a look at the current radar perspective, which still shows widespread light to moderate rains coming down at a good clip in San Francisco, but it's not overly heavy at the moment. We'll turn on some labels on the map too, so you can kind of keep your geographic bearings. Let's talk about how things are going to evolve over the course of the next few days. I'll have to drop the radar out of the way here so it doesn't mess up our monitor. They're looking out at a very foggy, cloud-shrouded, rain-shrouded Bay Bridge. The flood watch that's in effect goes all the way through 10 p.m. Sunday, but within that time frame, there is a time that's more likely to result in the flooding threat. We'll talk about that in a second. The heaviest rain is going to fall tonight and Saturday, and then showers on Sunday. Not as heavy, not as widespread, but still wet. Be flexible, very flexible with any outdoor plans. And then the next peak of this atmospheric river arrives by Monday and Tuesday of next week. So let's return to the floor map and talk about how things are going to shape up as we head through the rest of tonight. This is the radar simulation from Futurecast from 6 o'clock this evening through 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. So widespread light to moderate rain. Again, whenever you see a little bit of yellow showing up, those are those pockets of heavier downpours. But in general, we are talking about that light to moderate rain continuing to soak what has been a pretty parched landscape over the course of the last 4 weeks. Some of the heaviest rain is going to fall tomorrow, especially the first half of the day. This takes us from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning through 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. You see that band of yellow marking its way through. That moving through around mid-morning tomorrow would coincide with probably the greatest flooding potential we're going to see across the entire Bay Area with this first peak in the atmospheric river. And then things kind of taper off to more often on showers. From 6 o'clock tomorrow evening through 6 o'clock Sunday morning, we're just taking things in these 12-hour chunks. You see the hit or miss nature of the showers. They're going to be light. They are going to be intermittent, so it's not going to rain everywhere all the time, especially inland in the East Bay and the Santa Clara Valley. You're going to be a little dry pocket Saturday night into the first half of Sunday, while the North Bay sees more or less consistent light to moderate rain. Then one last animation from 6 o'clock Sunday through 6 in the evening. Light to moderate rain showers continue. Gradually, this is going to make its way farther and farther back inland into the East Bay and into the Santa Clara Valley, but really that southward push is going to wait until after the sun goes down on Sunday evening. So the entire Bay Area is still under a flood watch. This went into effect at noon today, goes all the way through 10 p.m. on Sunday. But within that time frame, there are basically areas that we're more concerned about as we head through the next few days. Today's risk of excessive rainfall, that's the terminology used by the Weather Prediction Center, was in the marginal category. It means it's not likely to happen, but we can't completely rule it out. For tomorrow, most of the Bay Area is in that slight risk. It's one level up, means an elevated threat of at least localized flooding. And then on Sunday, the risk of excessive rainfall, again, localized flooding, gets pushed to the north. So while the whole Bay Area is under that flood watch, it's basically for tomorrow, the first half of the day, that all of us have to be concerned about. The North Bay, though, over the next several days is where you're going to be adding up more and more rain. This is the 7-day rainfall estimate from the Weather Prediction Center. Very similar numbers to what we showed you 24 hours ago. This is on top of what's already fallen. 5.5 to 6.5 inches of rain for the North Bay. On a widespread basis, we're talking about 2 to 4 inches of rain for most of the Bay Area. Over 2 inches of rain in San Jose. It might be a little bit optimistic, but even in the rain shadow of the Santa Cruz Mountains, I think you are going to pick up a decent amount of moisture over the course of the next 7 days. Here's the 7-day forecast, which is not completely rainy. There is one dry day. It's Wednesday. We get a chance to let the rain soak in for a day, and then another round of rain is likely to head our way by Thursday and Friday of next week, ending the first full week of February on the complete opposite note of how we spent most of this very dry month of January. Things shifting just as the calendar page turns. Ann?
All right, we asked for it. Now, these storms could also help boost the snowpack in the Sierra. It measured just over 22 inches today in the latest survey at Phillips Station. That is 2 inches less than last month because of our dry January and 46% of average for this time of year. Our first alert weather team is going to continue to stay on top of all these storms. Stay with us this evening and through the weekend for updates on air and on the free CBS News app. And as all hands on deck as crews work to recover the bodies of all 67 victims of the mid-air collision between a commercial plane and an Army helicopter in D.C. Meantime, the National Transportation Safety Board is conducting its investigation into the crash, and it's going to be a lengthy process. Within the past couple of hours, the NTSB said they did recover the black box from the Black Hawk helicopter. So now that they have that device, as well as the 2 black boxes from American Airlines Flight 5342. They're hoping to extract data from them to provide clues into the cause of that crash. Today, the NTSB also said they're going to work to make changes to avoid another disaster like this, but not until they finish that investigation.
Our job is to find the facts, but more importantly, our job is to make sure this tragedy doesn't happen again, regardless of what anyone may be saying. Our investigators never want to see this happen again, and I never want to have to go back and brief another set of family like that.
The NTSB says it'll look at things like staffing, mechanics, and environment during that lengthy investigation. And we're using our virtual studio this afternoon to take a look at the Potomac River, where you can see the crash happen, the flight patterns there of the jet and the helicopter. We do know an air traffic controller warned the helicopter that they were nearing the plane's path. Again, we still don't know ultimately what led to the crash, but CBS News has learned that preliminary flight data indicates both aircraft appear to have been flying at about 400 feet in the air, and military helicopters are supposed to stay below 200 feet. We're also learning more about the victims today. 27-year-old crew chief Ryan O'Hara survived a tour of duty in Afghanistan, but he was on that helicopter that crashed on Wednesday night.
I'm so proud of my children. They are wonderful human beings. They care about people. They want to help people. So I don't think they're judgmental of people. And Ryan was just such an easy baby to take care of. You know, made me a better person for having to raise him. I couldn't have asked for a better son.
Many others killed in the crash were members of the U.S. figure skating community. They were returning from a training camp in Kansas.
Well, Jean, she has a beautiful smile. Like, her smile was so contagious, and it's like she would light up any room that she was in. And Spencer, he had this like very beautiful voice, and like I just wish I could like hear it again.
Investigators say the remains of 41 victims have been recovered so far. Joining me now to talk about the investigation is retired senior airline captain Ross Sagun. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We're hearing that the NTSB probably is not going to have its official report out for maybe another month. What takes so long in this investigation? You'd think a lot of this information would be readily available.
Well, there's a lot to unpack. There are a lot of issues to look into. The NTSB generally issues a preliminary report in about 30 days after the incident, but it'll probably take much longer for the final report.
A lot of talk right now focused on the Black Hawk helicopter, and just thinking of all the sensors and all the technology that this thing has for all of its high-level missions it does for the military. How could it have gotten into this plane's path?
Well, I think there are a lot of issues here. One is the design of the helicopter routes around this very busy airport, Reagan International Airport. Um, I don't understand how they could have approved these routes in the first place, which puts the helicopter very close to the normal flight path of an aircraft, such as the American regional jet. Even if, and there's a lot of supposition that the helicopter may not have been at the proper altitude, but even at the altitudes that I've heard are the accepted altitudes, I think it's very, very close to where normal jets would be flying in normal profiles. I just don't understand how that happened.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there's a lot of talk about how crowded these runways are and that airspace is. You feel like that could have been a significant factor here and maybe needs to change?
Well, absolutely, especially with the application of visual separation that was applied. That's where the separation responsibility gets transferred from the controller to the pilot. Sounds like the pilot of the helicopter accepted that responsibility and was burdened with the responsibility to see and avoid the specific aircraft. And with all the background lights and the dense traffic situation, it's virtually impossible to positively identify an aircraft at night. Just looking out into the sky, you can't tell. All you see are a couple lights. You don't know if it's a United 777, for example, or an American regional jet. All you see are lights.
So that's when I would think, some of the technology, the sensors would come into play.
That'll be another interesting facet of the investigation. The TCAS, the Traffic Collision Avoidance System, which was certainly installed on at least the passenger jet, should have been displaying the traffic and giving situational awareness to those pilots. However, because of the possible late change of approach from runway 1 to runway 33 for the ostensibly to improve the operational efficiency for the controller, the pilots may not have had appropriate time to adequately brief the change of approach, and they consequently might have been workload and task saturated and not spending as much time as they could have looking out the window.
Okay, and so we're talking again about human error, and I know there's a lot of spotlight right now on the air traffic controllers. How much do you think human error there might have played a part?
I think human error is going to play a huge part in the entire investigation on all sides. As we like to say in the accident or aviation safety arena, it's like the Swiss cheese model. It's not just one thing that causes a crash, but usually many links in the chain are broken. For example, when all the holes in the Swiss cheese line up, that's when you have a problem. I think that's going to be the case at the end of the day in this accident. A lot of factors will come into play.
Anything else should we be considering or watching out for as this investigation continues?
Yes, I think again how they applied the visual separation technique is going to be a big issue. I think the traffic advisories that were given to both aircraft are going to be an issue. I heard the controller in the limited tapes that I've heard, he gave traffic advisories to the helicopter. I did not hear traffic advisories to the regional jet, which would have been required by the 711065 controller manual.
All right, aviation expert Aras Sagun, we appreciate your perspective. And stay with us for continuing coverage of the investigation into this mid-air collision. We're going to bring you the latest on air and on our streaming platforms. Coming up, we're also going to take a look at some of the sweeping changes ordered by President Trump this weekend, asking a local GOP leader how he thinks the president is doing in his first 2 weeks in office. President Trump continuing to order sweeping changes in week 2 of his new term, everything from reshaping the military to appointing a new FAA administrator to freeing up federal funding for school choice. And starting tomorrow, the U.S. is going to be levying a 10% tax on all imports from China and a 25% tax on all goods from Canada and Mexico. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the reason is based on border security.
For the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans.
The tariffs could trigger higher prices on a wide range of products and disrupt the energy, auto, lumber, and/or agricultural sectors. Today, members of the LGBT community and local leaders came together in San Francisco to denounce President Trump's recent executive orders targeting transgender youth.
These are real human beings who are just trying to live their lives. And they are not doing anything to harm anyone. They are just living their lives, and they're being targeted and demonized, and it's despicable.
One of the president's executive orders directs the Justice Department to prosecute teachers who affirm the gender of trans and non-binary students. That includes using their preferred pronouns and allowing them to use the bathrooms that align with their gender. The president also signed an order to end federal funds for hospitals that provide gender-affirming care to people under the age of 19. Senator Weiner says the California legislature is currently drafting measures to protect and provide resources for the trans community. Well, joining me now to talk about all of this, the president's first 2 weeks in office, is John Dennis, the chairman of the San Francisco Republican Party. Thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure, but I have to update you. I'm the former chairman of the San Francisco Republican Party. I did not run for re-election. I ended my term a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, I just falsely promoted you. Okay, but thank you for that clarification. Let's start with the collision, of course, the plane crash in Washington, D.C. How do you think the president is handling the first major tragedy of his presidency?
President Trump's, ability to cut through the morass that can accompany these kinds of investigations, and they sort of feel like he'll leave no stone uncovered, and also won't be affected politically. There'll be no political influence. You'll get the real story from Donald Trump and the Trump administration.
I know there's been a lot of focus on DEI. Do you approve of him bringing that up right off the bat?
Well, it's got to be discussed. This issue of what's been called the competence crisis has been growing, through social media over the last few years. People are concerned that that the DEI initiatives are having an impact on our competence throughout our entire economy. And so, in the end, it may not have had any impact on this unfortunate tragedy, but it has to be looked at.
Let's talk a little bit about the tariffs, because those are about to go into place. We're talking about Canada, Mexico, and China. This was one of his campaign promises. Do you think voters are going to be pleased that he acted so quickly?
Oh, I think so. I think voters are thrilled with what he's done so far. Certainly the people who supported him. And I think really the average American is excited about what he's done. I mean, think about it. Donald Trump took signing executive orders and made theater out of it when he brought it at the arena in Washington, D.C. and started signing executive orders, and the crowd was going wild as they were announced. As far as the tariffs are concerned, my sense is that Donald Trump understands the downside of tariffs as well. We do not want to revisit Smoot-Hawley and that episode that happened in the 1930s, but he also needs to have some leverage over the impact that places like Mexico and Canada are having on our outrageous problem with immigration and drugs coming across our borders. So I think expect Donald Trump to use tariffs as a leverage to get what we need done here for the American people.
Okay, if that even temporarily does cause a rise in prices, do you think that Trump supporters will understand that and suck it up in the short term?
I think so, because what we may also see is an increase in in the businesses that might be impacted. You mentioned lumber and timber. Well, we have a lot of lumber in this country, and that could actually impact those businesses and make a positive impact for employment in those industries. So it's a give and take. I personally, I hope that he's not going to do broad tariffs on many countries, but if he uses them in a targeted way as leverage to help the average American, I think most people will understand that.
Let's talk a little bit about the border and immigration issue. That has been a controversy, making a lot of people nervous around the country. What would you say to people who say that he's gone too far and is scaring full communities?
Well, I think a lot of people have sympathy for folks who came here for a better life on the one hand. On the other hand, I think a lot of people don't have sympathy, and the polling reflects that. For people who came here illegally, this country has been very welcoming. We take in more immigrants than all countries in the world combined legally. But to just have folks running across the border and being allowed to roam around the country, being relocated with federal money, with taxpayer money, is really outrageous, and people have responded that way. So I think I think if people want to come, are deported and they want to get in the back of the line and come in through legally, I think that's the solution that most Americans are in sync with.
All right, and I know you live in San Francisco. You just heard some of our local politicians upset about the president's transgender policies. What do you have to say in response to that?
I think, well, first of all, I just think it's outrageous for anyone to advocate that minors should transition. There are two genders, and no child should be subjected to any kind of medical intervention, whether it's chemical or surgical, God forbid, to have them change their gender. When people become adults, they can do what they like, but no one talks about that here in San Francisco, and I'm going to be really emphatic about that. No child should be touched and should transition, and any minor should. Look, you can't get a tattoo with a parent's consent in California. You can't go into a tanning booth without a parent with the parent's consent in California. You certainly shouldn't be subject to transitioning.
All right, San Francisco Republican John Dennis, appreciate your perspective. We're going to be right back.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. You can always get all the latest headlines and weather over on Pix Plus. And remember to like and click the button on the bottom left of your screen to subscribe for the biggest Bay Area news.